Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello everyone, it's Koos here. I don't know if you're new to the channel or not, but a month or two ago, we made a decision to leave YouTube. And the reason why we left YouTube is explained in a video on Rumble. You can go to the links in the description and you will see why that decision was made. So the video which is following now is not the entire video. It's a 5 minutes, 10 minutes perhaps of the entire video. The whole video is probably an hour, might even be more. As you know, we tend to do long videos at Legacy. And therefore, I'm asking you, go to the description, see where that video is on Rumble, go there, subscribe to the channel at Rumble, or subscribe to the Telegram channel, which will give you the direct links for the videos which will come out. We're going to post these little teasers for a month or two, and thereafter we're probably going to say, no, you either come to Rumble or you don't see the new videos. And that's where we stand today. I hope you understand, and I think you will understand if you actually go and see my reasons why we made this decision. Again, go to the link in the description below, and I'll see you in Rumble. Thank you.
Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello everyone, it's Koos here. We're trying something new here, and with new and here I mean at Rumble and not at YouTube. YouTube will only get like a teaser because we're moving the channel over to Rumble where we can speak freely. But what we were trying to do on every Friday at Rumble is to bring you military history, to bring you more than just someone telling his story. But even that, of course, is military history. If you as a veteran come here and explain to us what you did during your service here, you're actually creating military history. That's what you're doing. And what authors will do, and the learned people, the professors, and those people will take everybody's story and they will put it together inside a book. Now, you can also do that, but you won't bother to write a book. What you will do is you will put it together in your head so that you can understand. So let's think about it. If there was someone who was at the same base as you or same operation as you, but perhaps at a different time or perhaps at a different place, but it's still the same in essence, then the two of you can learn from each other. And for us, who were perhaps not there at that operation, you know, we can then listen to all your stories and we combine it and we find that we get a strategic overview of what happened. Now, that's very important because strategic versus tactical is really a different thing. It's not the same thing, and it takes, I would say, a very special type of general actually who is able to think strategically and then to implement tactically. Now, I was asked the other day, who do I think was the best general ever? And I think I surprised the questionnaire. The one asking the question, I was actually surprised the hell out of her by saying that I would consider General Lorenzo Ricci or Ricci as to be the best strategic thinking general ever. And of course, very few of you will know who I'm talking about. This was a black pope, and this is a guy who actually created the USA. Now, that you wouldn't read in the history books either. But should you bother to read Codename Masamole 26 or Oath of Evil, the War on Protestantism, you'll see I dedicate the entire chapter to this evil fellow, also known as the Professor. And I'm not going to tell you the story, and I'm not going to tell you why I said he's the most brilliant general I know. You can go and find out. It's about the Jesuit order, about the Black Pope, not the books as such, this Ricci. And in it, a lot of things are revealed in the books. She then narrowed it down, which is always a good thing when you speak to people and you think you can do a bit of a cross-examination thing is, for interrogation, you need to be very specific. So she asked, okay, Koos, what do you think is the best military general in recent times, say in the last 100 years? And then without doubt, there's only one guy which I can think about, and that would be Field Marshal Montgomery. And Montgomery, Bernard Law Montgomery, is well known to South Africans and well known to South African troops, simply because we fought under him, I think on the 8th Army. And even there's a story or two to be told. So what I've done is I've taken clips of Montgomery from all over the internet. They don't have copyright on them anymore. They're too old. And I've put them together into a video for us here, because I think that the love of military history is with you guys as well. I've written dozens and dozens of books, and all of them are filled with military history, and I was very, very good with history at school. In fact, it was the only thing I was actually good at. And it came naturally to me. I could read a book and I would remember what's in that book. And I won all the prizes for history. And then I would take that 5 rand or 10 rand, which I won, I would go and buy more history books. And so I built up a library of more than 1,000 books by the time I was, I suppose, in my 20s. Now, it's a fascinating concept, who's the best general, because there's no real answer. You're probably going to come out with, say, Eisenhower. Some of you will say Patton. I don't rate Patton highly at all. Rommel, tactical, yes, fantastic. Strategic, no, not in my eyes. But that's a subject for another day. We can talk about these things, and everybody's right. There is no wrong with these things, you know, and I think a little bit of luck also play a big part. But we have to look broad when we speak about these subjects. I mean, I would rate Montgomery, then I would say Erich von Manstein, and then I would say Zhukov of the Russian or the Soviet army. I would rate them 1, 2, 3, and from different sides, from different armies. Of course, Montgomery and Zhukov was on the same side. About what, 70% of the fighting in the Second World War in European theater was taking place with the Russians, with the Soviet Union, things which no American apparently know. And they don't know either that the war actually started in 1939, officially. Of course, we can argue it started before that, perhaps 1933 already. I would go further and say 1918. That's where it started. It was Montgomery, though, and this is not true. I couldn't find any evidence of it, but it's such a good story. I will tell you about it. It said that he will take the entire Germany with 2 South African divisions. Now, we like saying those things, but I don't think it's true. I don't think it happened. In fact, if you look at history, and I write about this in one of the books, Codename Phantom, and there's lots of these historical things inside the books. And in Codename Phantom, I speak of an incident which many of you won't know about, but trust me, it happened. And this had to do with Archibald Wavell. Now, he became a field marshal as well at some stage. And he was a good officer, there's no doubt. He was a good general. And he understood generalship, which is another term which Montgomery loved to use. And he had a quirk about him, this fellow, this Archibald Wavell, in the sense that he brought bad luck on aircraft. They say that if he walked past a squadron of Spitfires just standing there on the runway, they were all grounded. He could break an aircraft by just walking past it. That is what they said. And he was in 6 different aircraft accidents and survived all of it. In fact, that arch liar, Winston Churchill, he refused to fly with Archibald Wavell. and for good reason, because he thought that he will die before his time if he dared to do that. But this Wavell fellow really insulted the South African army. Now let me explain to you what happened. Jannie Smuts wanted South Africa, the Union of South Africa, to be involved in the Second World War. That's a topic for another day as well. Is whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, or whether he had a choice or no choice or whatever, that's a discussion by itself. And of course, when South Africa got involved and they didn't go up north to Egypt immediately, they went other ways, more to the east of Africa. And they did very well. And then Smuts were talking that, you know, perhaps we should send the South African Infantry Division up north, you know, to fight the Italians, to get involved in the African theater to the north, where the serious things were happening. Not that anything was happening at that stage, but that was the idea, because Smuts wanted to get involved. Why? Well, you have to see at what secret organizations Jannie Smuts belonged to. But again, I might even make an episode on that as well. Lots of things people don't know. And so Archibald Wavell didn't want it. He didn't want the South Africans. He said they were not good enough. He said they were untrained. They should stay in Kenya. They should not go away. You'll remember that the South African division is actually the guys who chased the Italians out of Abyssinia. And later years, of course, they completely forgot we saved their asses from Italy. But anyway, whatever. So it is. And it was Churchill then that said that, look, they are white people, they're white troops. And he used the following words. He said, they probably as fine material as exists for warfare in spacious countries. And he went on. And this I will hold against Churchill for the rest of his life. Of course, he's dead already and he will stay dead, but you know what I mean. He said about the South African army, they are certainly good enough to fight the Italians. They are good enough to fight the Italians. This is the same Churchill who's got his ass kicked in the Boer War. You know, the same one who swam the mighty Apis River, which I can pee across if I want to, even at my age. As a young man, it was quite easy. It's the same Winston Churchill who should have been executed for war crimes during the Boer War, for shooting at the Boer warriors while he was a correspondent, getting involved as a civilian just before he was captured. Yes, same Churchill. The same Churchill, of course, who wanted to bomb Turkey with poison gas while he was drunk. Yeah, drunk, like pissed, in a cabinet meeting. Yeah, I write a lot about Winston Churchill, and I reveal the truth about this 53-degree Freemason, and also a Druidic priest. The man who said there is no life after death, is just darkness. Yeah, I know these things. It's in the books. But Churchill, after insulting us like that, did say to Wavell, you're going to get these people into the story. And so they got the South African division. There was a police brigade there as well. Some of my uncles on my father's side were fighting with this division. Then came Tobruk, 1942, I think. And that is where basically the British armor withdrew right past Tobruk. They just kept going. They ran away so quickly that nobody could keep up with it, not even Rommel. And they ran all the way to Egypt. And they left the South Africans in Tobruk. But Tobruk was not the same as the year before, when the Australians were there. It wasn't only the Australians. Really, the Australians were a minority there. They were not really the main manner there. But they did very well, the Rats of Tobruk. And they stopped the attack on Tobruk. Sadly for the South Africans, the general, the commander surrendered. and it's a big disgrace. And from the tatters of this surrender, a new unit came to be. It was the 6th Armored Division, which fought under General Mark Clark, US General, mate of Eisenhower, fought under him in Italy, where they did extremely well. In fact, let us see what Mark Clark had to say about the 6th Armored Division. He said, "It was a battle-wise outfit, bold and aggressive against the enemy, and willing to do whatever job was necessary. In fact, after a period of severe day and night fighting, the 6th had in an emergency gone into the line as infantrymen. Of course, they started as infantry, but because South Africa had so few men available after the disaster at Tobruk, they could only form an armored division. It's less people. When the snow stole their armor, they dug in their tanks and used them as artillery to make up for a shortage in heavy guns. Whenever I saw them, I was impressed by the large number of decorations and honors they earned the hard way. The attack against strongly organized German positions were made with great elan and without regard for casualties. Despite their comparatively small numbers, they never complained about losses. Neither did Smuts. That's now Jannie Smuts, the Premier, Prime Minister, who made it clear that the Union of South Africa intended to play its part in the war, and it most certainly did. Yes, it did. I think in 1940, a US cruiser arrived at Cape Town to take over South African gold on behalf of the British Empire. You will read about that in the books as well. Interesting thing about this Mark Clark is that he shared something with that arch liar Winston Churchill. And I might make a few episodes on Winston Churchill. That will be very fascinating. Because there's a side of Churchill which is not known. Why not? Because he said, I will make sure that history is kind to me because I will write the book. I will write my own history. And he did. He did. And of course, he made great speeches. But sadly, there's stories about those speeches as well. Did you know that when you made that speech of we will fight on the beaches and we'll fight wherever, yeah, you know, where he said that England stands alone, forgetting about the rest of the empire countries like South Africa, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Jamaica, Kenya, Nigeria. All of them, no, don't count, don't worry, no, we were standing alone. Like hell you were standing alone, we were with you. But when he made that speech, Parliament started laughing at him. They thought he was funny. They thought he was an idiot. Then he went out and he attacked the French Navy. At Marshall Bernard. It almost caused the French to join hands with the Nazis. What do you think would have happened if the French fleet, with the Italian fleet, and with the Nazi Germany fleet combined hands properly on a good leadership? What do you think? Do you think the Royal Navy would have stopped them? No, they would not have. That's how close that idiot of a Churchill came in causing even more loss of people. But anyway, the thing he has in common with Mark Clark is Knight of Malta. Yeah, they're all Knights of Malta. Why is that? Why do they belong to these secret organizations? The funny thing about it is, you know, there's people on both sides. You think of people like Franz von Papen, who was a Nazi Minister of Foreign Affairs, I suppose, before he got replaced as spy. Anthony Blunt, I think he was the fourth man of the Cambridge spies. All of them. Mark Clark, as I said, General Stilwell, yes. George Bush, the elder, Herbert Bush. He was, of course, also belonged to another secret organization, Skulls and Bones. They all bow to one place, you know. All of it, even Mandela, with Reinhard Gehlen, the West German intelligence chief, all of it. Montgomery's name you won't find on this. That's why I'm telling you this. There's nothing to say that Montgomery was ever involved with secret organizations. In fact, as a man, he was a widower. He married late in his life, as it was in those days. She died, and he never married again. He never drank. He couldn't stand people who smoke. He would order people to, before he made a speech, he would say, okay, you have a right to cough for the next 5 minutes, and thereafter I'm speaking, and you don't cough at all. He would come out with things like that. But the one thing about Montgomery which impressed me the most was actually what happened in France in 1940. You will remember that when the German Blitzkrieg started, the British army couldn't run quickly enough to Dunkirk. And other places. There were other places as well besides Dunkirk. They basically ran. And Montgomery at that stage, I think, was a major general. And he was in command of a division. And he also trained his people to move at night. Now, it wasn't that easy in those days. There were no satellite communications. There were no night vision, nothing like that, not at all. And so what he did is he started something which I tried to implement as well, and I did implement in my life, is we trained his people to drive in convoys without lights by following the truck in front of them. And how he did it was to paint on the rear axle. He would paint a little bit of fluorescent green paint. And he would make like a mark there. And then he would also take the tail light and he would shine it down. And it would glow. And he would be able, in the vehicle behind, would be able to follow the vehicle in front. And that's how he's got almost the entire division out. Of course, they left the weapons behind and all the heavy weapons. That story of Dunkirk, perhaps we should do a thing about Dunkirk as well, because it's such bullshit, which you're reading in these days, is that they came out by harbor. Most of them came out by the harbor, not by standing in the lines with the trucks and getting out like that with a small boats. That was a minority. It wasn't a lot. And by the way, the agreement was they would go back to France and keep fighting. The French army, which people so dismissive of these days, which I actually hold in a very high regard, and so did Winston Churchill. If you go and look at how many times in Parliament he said something like, thank God for the French army, you would be surprised. Because, you know, the narrative these days are totally something else. And so the Frenchmen, the French soldiers were actually holding the Germans back. And that allowed the British Expeditionary Force to run away and get to home. And they did wrong. They ran so fast they left the weapons behind. It's pathetic. Pathetic. That's why even Churchill said there cannot be something like a decoration for Dunkirk. It was a defeat. Yes. But if you look at the movies, it was one of the greatest. Well, it was heroic. A lot of things happened there was heroic, but don't tell me it was a victory, because that's nonsense. And so to tell a long story short, these guys, the French soldiers were also rescued. They went back to France. And of course, a month later, France surrendered. And Vichy France came into being. And these guys spent the next 5 years in a German prisoner of war camp. The Brits, when did they go back to France again? When did they go back? Let me think. June 6, 1944. Under command of an American colonel who became a general called Eisenhower. Brilliant soldier. But he has not seen any combat before he command of his armies. You know that? Very interesting about this fellow. He never saw any combat. And yet he was this great general. But it was Montgomery who was in charge of the ground forces. He was just Eisenhower was just the supreme commander. Later on, he took over again. We can talk about Eisenhower as well. Guys, I don't know if you like history or not, but for me to talk about these things are fantastic. And now we have actually an opportunity to listen to Montgomery. to listen to what he was saying, to listen, I mean, looking back. And we even have a clip here which he was speaking to his men just before D-Day. And he was just such a wonderful, wonderful leader. People just loved him, and he was unconventional, conventional. Because if you look what happened at El Alamein, where he made his name, and where he basically stopped the German advance, saving Egypt, and then therefore the Middle East and the oil, because they were wanting, so some historians say, trying to join up with the Russians, with the Germans in the Russians, in Russia, trying to move up and link together. Well, they never had the main to do that. They couldn't. It's like telling me they wanted to invade the US. No, it's not possible. They never wanted to invade the US. It cannot be done. But the wonderful thing is we can listen to him here. We can hear him speak. And who knows, in a few years from now, many years from now, there might be some youngsters who's not even born yet. And they might be listening to us. And that's why it's so important that you come and speak. Bring your story to us. Let us get the puzzle together. Let us speak to each other before it's too late. In this week, which I made this video, and it might be a month or two ago by the time you see it, we lost General George Meyering to death. And we were about to speak to George Meyering. We were close. We were so close. And then sadly, the general got ill and he passed. And we, of course, our deepest condolences with the family. But at least with Montgomery, with Monty, we are able to listen to him, hear his wisdom, hear what he says, hear what advice he has. So let us look at this video. As I said, it's not a continuous story. It's different clips. Where there's no sound, I will put in a voiceover just to explain what's happening as far as I know. And that's it. So thanks. And if you have any suggestions where we can do next time, tell me. Leave a comment. Let us see.
This week, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome ashore my 1000th castaway since I devised this series back in 1942, and it's Field Marshal Montgomery of Alamein. Field Marshal, is music an interest of yours?
Well, it is now, because I'm what you might call in the evening of life, and it hasn't always been.
What was your overall plan in choosing just 8 records to take with you for an indefinite period of solitude? Are you looking back?
Well, in a sense, but I chose, first of all, the first one, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, because I'm a soldier, and the last one, Over the Wings of a Dove, because I thought I might be able to fly away from this island. And then, in between, I filled in 2 to 7 with songs and tunes I'm really very fond of indeed, and like to listen to. And that's how I did it.
Well, let's start with the Battle Hymn of the Republic. The Battle Hymn of the Republic, sung by the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. What's your second choice?
Second choice is My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose, which is a Scottish love song, and I think one of the nicest I've ever heard, and it's sung by Kenneth McKellar, and I'm very fond of it indeed.
Kenneth McKellar. Field Marshal, your childhood by modern standards was very Spartan and very disciplined, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and of course my mother ran the whole house. My father was a saint. If any saints do walk about on this earth, I worshipped him. My mother was a disciplinarian. She was married when she was 16, and she had her 17th birthday on her honeymoon. And, of course, children began to appear, and she was the wife of a very busy London vicar, and shortly afterwards the wife of a bishop.
Yes.
And there was no time to attend to the children. Well, she didn't know how to do it because she was so young, you see.
Were you a rebellious boy?
I was very rebellious, and when my mother demanded discipline from me, I refused to give in. I said no and took my beating. Now, I can tell you a story that's an interesting one, that I was caught one day in the garden smoking. I didn't want to smoke, but I just thought I would. I was smoking a cigarette behind a bush or something, and I was caught and taken into the house, and my father heard about this, and he took me into our little chapel, which we had in the house, and we knelt down, and he prayed to the Almighty that I might be forgiven this dreadful sin. And then with a little silence, and then I thought that the matter was settled. The Almighty had accepted my sorrow. Not at all. When we opened the door and went out, there was my mother with a cane. She thought a more earthly correction was needed as well, and I got beaten. I took it. But I think the point is really that when people say to me, what makes you tick? I think what makes me tick was that I absolutely refused to give in when I thought there was no need to. For instance, my mother said to me once, "Bernard, you will sign the pledge." I said, "Never will I sign the pledge. I don't want to drink. I don't drink. But I'm not going to sign the pledge." That was the sort of thing which I think moulded my character. I'd like to think it did. And it was good for me.
Yes. On both sides of your family there were churchmen, there were civil servants, traders. No military tradition at all. Why did you decide to be a soldier? Was it a sudden decision?
Well, I think, as far as I can remember, I wanted to be a soldier when I was quite young, about 5 or 6. And then I think it finally became finalized when the time of the Boer War.
Yes.
And I saw the soldiers going off to the Boer War in their red coats, of course, in those days, and I said, that's the stuff for me. Now, that was very unpopular indeed with my family, who wanted me for the church. It was always assumed, because I was like my father in face, that I must be a clergyman. When I got to St. Paul's, and they said, both good in London, what are you going to be? I said, a soldier.
Yes. You had an excellent school record at St. Paul's, not quite such a good one at Sandhurst.
Well, my school record at St. Paul's was very good on the game side, but on the academic side it wasn't so good. Sandhurst, no. Instead of being there a year, I was there a year and a half, and finally passed out a full private, which is all right.
That's all right. And then the army in India. Now, in Edwardian days, the army in India was more equipped for ceremonial duties than as a tough fighting force.
Well, I think in those days, the army, I think it really was more amateur. They didn't understand that war was a serious business and a life study, nor did I at that time.
Now, from that rather picturesque form of soldiering, you went as a young subaltern in charge of a platoon into the First Battle of Ypres.
Well, I went as a young subaltern in charge of a platoon in August 1914, which dealt with Mons and Lecato, and commanded my platoon of 30 men. And I went right through that war, of course.
Yes. You were badly wounded.
Very badly wounded in the First Battle of Ypres.
Yes.
And I was taken back to an advanced dressing station, and they thought I was dead. And there was an officer there who was dead, and they dug 2 graves because I was just about to die. Well, I defeated them. I didn't die, you see.
In 1939, you were back in France in command of a division. Had you any inkling yourself that all was not as well as it seemed, that the Allied equipment was wrong, that the overall tactics were wrong, that the French army was wrong?
Yes, I had. Interesting point, that. I better explain it by saying that Neville Chamberlain, who was Prime Minister, came out to see the army in the field, and he came one day to have lunch with me at my divisional headquarters. This was about January or February of that winter.
1940.
Yeah. And he said, I don't think the Germans will attack, do you? And I said, well, sir, you wait. Wait till the weather gets better in the spring, and there'll be a frightful disaster. The French army will crack. The generals are too old, and the unit commanders are too old, and the politicians, the ones I know, are all second-class lawyers. They're no good. The whole show is wrong. And it'll be a bad show.
Yes, and how right you were. Well, let's break off at this point for your third record. What do we have?
My third record is one by Richard Tauber, You Are My Heart's Delight.
Richard Tauber singing You Are My Heart's Delight. Now, so back to 1940. You came back to England via Dunkirk, and you refitted the division. It was the only completely outfitted division there was in the country at that time, I believe.
Well, there was only the equipment. in England for one division.
Yes.
And it was given to me, and I got ready to go back
To France.
to France. Luckily, France capitulated on the 17th of June. Otherwise, we should have had the same thing over again.
Now, the rest of your war story is history. The Western Desert, Tunis, Sicily, Italy, the Normandy landings. You were in your 50s, and you suddenly became a national figure, and you became a character, an instantly recognizable character, the unmistakable Monty with the beret with the badges on it and the flying jacket. Now, this was a morale-building project and a public relations job in which you had a considerable hand, wasn't it?
It was, really. I thought in those days, you see, that there was the staff and the generals were remote from the soldiers. Now, I've learned, of course, in my career that doesn't pay, that the soldiers are really the people who, in the end, win the battle. And you've got to be with them, you see, all the time. And they must know you. The wearing of the beret, of course, that was quite an accident. I had to go about finally in a tank when the battle began, not to fight from, because it wasn't my job to fight, but if you were blown up by a mine in a jeep, you'd lost a leg. But if you were in a tank, you didn't. And then the tank crew said one day, "I think, sir, that instead of wearing your red hat, it'd be much better to wear a beret." And they gave me a beret with a tank or badge in. Well, then I stuck my general, I was a general then, my general's badge in and had 2 berets. And for the rest of the war, I wore it. The Army Council didn't like it.
No.
I got ticked off. But I stuck to it. I said it's worth a couple of divisions.
Of course.
Because when things are bad in the battle, you go up in front. And if you just wear a red hat, they don't know who it is. But once they saw the beret with 2 badges, they said, there's the old boy. Must be all right.
You worked, of course, very closely with Winston Churchill. How good a military tactician was he? How much practical help could he give in the map room?
Well, one of my troubles was that Winston had once been a soldier. Now, you would have thought that might have been an advantage, but it wasn't, because his soldiering had great difficulty in getting away from the early days, like the Battle of Omdurman, when he drew his snicker-snee and charged the dervishes, you see. And he didn't understand that 1944, going to Normandy, was a little bit different, or even fighting in the desert. Now, I don't mind telling you that when I was fighting the Battle of Alamein, he wanted me to attack Rommel in September. I refused because of the moon. I had to have a moon for purposes of handling the mines and things. And I won't be ready, I said, by the September moon. He wanted September to synchronize with Stalingrad. He's fixed it up with Stalin, you see.
Yes.
And I said, no. As a commander-in-chief in the field, you're bound to have tussles with your political master. You can't help it, you see. But Winston was very good when he saw that it was no good going on with it. Now, when he came to stay with me in the field, which he did several times, I used to make it quite clear to him. I said, "Sir, you are here in the zone of the armies. You must do what I tell you, because we can't afford you to take risks, you see, and I should get in awful trouble if you got bumped off by a shell or something." He was very good indeed. He agreed that in the zone of the armies, I was the boss. Mm-hmm. Very good.
Yes. What has been the most exultant moment in your military life? Not necessarily the greatest moment, like accepting the German surrender on Lüneburg Heath, but one good, satisfying moment that you look back on with great pleasure.
In the whole of my military life?
Yes.
Well, I should think getting ashore successfully in Normandy, with fairly small casualties. Comparatively, it was a great moment.
The main plan had succeeded.
Yeah, the main plan succeeded.
I mentioned just now Lüneburg Heath. You still have, I believe, that German surrender document. You hung on to it.
I did, but I've given it away.
Have you?
Then, about a year ago, after my house was burgled, I said, I think I better give this to the Imperial War Museum, and they've got it.
Which is where it is now.
Well, it's a national thing. It's the original bit of paper.
Yes. Let's have your 4th record, please.
My 4th record is Invitation to the Waltz by Weber. And I chose that because it was a great favour to my wife. And you might think, of course, that I'm not the sort of person who went dancing, but actually, when I was married, I did. And she liked that very much. Invitation to the Waltz by Weber.
Invitation to the Waltz, Willy Boskowski conducting the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. Field Marshal, you spent a lot of your retirement in writing. Have you another book on the stocks?
No, I finished. I read a lot and I think a lot, and I'm not doing any more writing.
You will live in this beautiful house in Hampshire, which you converted from a mill. What are your other occupations? Do you go to the theatre? Do you watch television?
Never. I never go out at night.
No. Let's have record number 5.
Record number 5 is a song sung by Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, and the title, English title, would be Don't Be Cross. And I'm very, very fond of it indeed. It's the most charming thing.
Don't Be Cross, sung by Elizabeth Schwarzkopf. Now what's record number 6?
Record number 6, a Welsh choir. I had in the war, of course, the Welsh division under me all the time, and they were very, very good. And when the war was over, I went down to Wales to see some of my old comrades, and it was Bevan, and Owen Bevan, whom I knew very well and liked immensely, who said I ought to go up to the Welsh valleys. I went to Ebervale, where I was received by the town council, the city fathers, very kindly, and when we had a talk, I said, would you mind singing to me? Because I understand you're very good at singing. And they said, certainly. And they sang the most marvellous things. It was quite off the cuff, they didn't know. So I would like a Welsh choir to sing to me the hymn All Through the Night.
All Through the Night, sung by the Treorchy Male Choir. Field Marshal, I don't have to ask how resourceful you'd be as a castaway, but how good are you with your hands?
I'm a good gardener. Of course, I don't actually do much gardening myself now. I give orders. But I know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can grow vegetables and things. I hope there'd be something there, maybe.
What about escaping? I know you're good with small craft. Could you build yourself a catamaran or a raft?
Well, I've done a lot of yachting, of course. I'm not certain that I could build one. I should keep a jolly good lookout for passing vessels, the smoke and things like that. I think I'd have to wait until I was rescued.
Yes, I have an idea we'd see you back here quite soon, somehow or other. Let's have record number 7.
Record number 7 is Cockles and Mussels, Alive, Alive, Oh. Now, I want that, of course, because I really am partly Irish. The Irish are great people, you know. They like fighting. And if they can't find anyone to fight, they generally fight each other. They're pretty good at that, you see. So I would like that song, Cockles and Mussels, Alive, Alive, Oh.
William Clausen singing Cockles and Mussels. Now we come to your last record. What's that?
My last record is Oh for the Wings of a Dove. And I've chose that one because I have a sort of feeling that after a time I wouldn't mind having a few wings myself to get out of this desert island when I get a bit sick of it.
Oh for the Wings of a Dove, sung by the choir of St. John's College, Cambridge. If you could take just one of the 8 records you've played us, which would it be?
Oh, I think it would be that song by Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, Don't Be Cross. Very lovely song.
And one luxury to take to the island with you.
Well, I think I'd like a piano. You see, I'm always very sorry I didn't learn music. I hadn't time. And if I had a piano on there with some literature about how to learn the piano, I would have lots of spare time and I would learn it.
Splendid. And one book, putting aside the Bible and Shakespeare, which are already on the island.
Well, I'd like, it may horrify you to say so, but I would like a book which I wrote myself about war.
Which one is this?
A history of warfare, in which I make it quite clear that the generals, besides fighting wars, have got to play their part in preventing them. And this book really, at the end, it goes into the question of how to stop fighting. And I would have lots of time and I would ponder over how we could stop people fighting. So when I came back, which I hope to do, one might be able to do something about it.
Right. And thank you, Field Marshal Montgomery of Alamein, for being the 1,000th castaway on Desert Island Discs.
Well, I'm delighted to be so, and I think it's a great honor to be the 1,000th. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everyone.
But first, what about more modern times, this century? After all, you must have known many, if not most, certainly in the Allied side, of the generals
Yeah.
of this century,
did.
whom would you rate of them
Well,
the highest?
it's...
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.